Oh, here we go. Okay, so shalom everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. I see people from actually all over the globe, from Israel to the Arab Peninsula to we have someone here from Australia, and of course from the United States. So it's wonderful to see everybody here. This lecture is being recorded, and it's going to be distributed both on our Facebook and on our YouTube channel for you to see and to download. This is free of charge, of course, to download and to use whatever you want. And what we will try to do in this presentation, we will try to analyze what was the true birthday of Jesus. I'm going to give you a small spoiler. It was definitely not December 25th. What I will try to show you is by using different means of external to the Bible sources, such as the Talmud, such as the Egyptian mythology, such as the fathers of the church from the Byzantine period, and try to shed some light, and also, by the way, from the Quran, that gives us a hint about the birthday of Jesus. So without further ado, I will do a screenshot. Alrighty. And let me minimize this. There we go. So what is the real birthday of Jesus? We just celebrated Christmas on a little bit more challenging Christmas this year, but okay. Oh, hold on one second. Let me just, there we go. We have people still coming in. Okay. There we go. Good. I'm sorry. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to analyze, as I said, the real birthday of Jesus using completely different methods to try for us to understand. Again, this lecture will be posted on tbctl.com and also on social media. So let's dive in and start to understand what is the meaning of the word Christmas before we even approach to the actual date. So Christmas is a short version of the word Christ Mass. The first time we hear about Christian Mass is in the year 1038 AD. Actually, that was the first time that was used, that name, Christian Mass, and it comes from the word Christ, okay, in Greek, and Messiah, okay, Messiah. From the we also have another abbreviation of the word Christmas, which will be Xmas. Xmas, many people believe that this is because of it's a shorter variation for marketing or for just not to write the whole word Christmas. Actually, it is not. Xmas is actually one of the oldest form of Christmas, which is built out of the Greek letter X, which is chi, which is the first word of the word for Christ, which is Christos, right here. This is how you spell it, Christos, all right? So in time, we had also the addition of the word Christos that became Christ Mass, okay? This is just for us to understand a little bit of historical background. When we look at historically, I'm trying to move the bar here. I'm sorry. When we look at, historically speaking, about the first time that we hear about Christmas celebration is actually in the year 336 AD. For those of you who don't know, AD meaning Annium Domini, okay, after Christ. BC will be before Christ. You can use it today as before Corona if you want, but the real one is before Christ. So the first time that we hear about Christmas is from Clement of Alexandria around the year 200 AD. So we are talking a little bit of about 170 years after crucifixion and resurrection. And look at what he's saying here. There are those who determine not just the year of our Lord's birth, but also the actual day. They said it took place on the 28th year of Augustus, in the 25th of the Egyptian month of Pachon or Pashon, okay, which will be May 20th, give or take. Further, others say that he was born around the 24th or 25th of the month of Parmuti, which will be April 21 and 21st, 2021. Something very interesting. Both months, Pashon and Parmuti, are very important months in terms of festivity. All right. Pashon is the festival of harvest, and Parmuti is the time where the crops start to appear. So we have these two dates associated with pagan Egyptian dates. We have to remember that in that time, the year 200 AD, Christianity is still not the central religion in the Roman Empire. It is a minority, and it's a religion that is being persecuted by the Roman authorities. So it's interesting to see that as Christmas today is abbreviated with and associated with a Roman pagan festival, back in the time of the fathers of the church, it was associated with an Egyptian festival. So let's dive in. Let's look at the differences of calendars. I'm building up the scene a little bit for us to understand the dates. So we have two or three main calendars that we are going to approach. The first one is the Julianic calendar that was introduced by Julius Caesar around the year 46 BCE, or what the Romans call it the year of Ab Urba, Urba Condita, which means from the establishment of the city. So Julius Caesar in the year 708 to the Urba Condita introduced the Julianic calendar. It was widely used throughout the world up until the year 1582 AD, which in that year we have Pope Urban VIII, Clement, sorry, the church, the Catholic Church, had changed it to the Gregory VIII, changed it to the Gregorian calendar, but up until today, this calendar is being used by the Pan-Orthodoxy Church. When you say Pan-Orthodox, is basically all the Eastern Orthodox churches, not the Coptic, not the Egyptian and the Ethiopian, but the Russian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, some of the Armenians. And so today, according to their calendar, it will be on January 7th. When we are looking at the Gregorian calendar was introduced, as I said, by Pope Gregory VIII in the year 1582. It is used mostly by vast majority of the Western churches all over the world. And according to that calendar, the Christmas, of course, is being celebrated on December 25th. The last calendar that we are going to approach, and I think is one of the most important to our understanding, is actually the Hebrew calendar. Hebrew calendar, the first time we hear about the Hebrew calendar is actually in the Bible, way actually in the beginning, book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus, Exodus 12:2, it says, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of the month. It shall be the first month of the year to you," which is meaning the month of Nisan, right here, which is Passover, okay, or Easter. That'll be the time of the beginning of the year. The first time we hear about this document, this calendar, as a law observant calendar, a formal calendar, is around the 10th century BCE. The earliest mentioning of that calendar we have, of course, in the Gezer tablet, which was found in the city of Gezer, dated to the 10th century BCE. During the Babylonian exile, after the first destruction, the destruction of the first temple in the year 586 BCE, and the return of the people of Israel around the year 510 BCE, we have the names of the calendar that as we use them today. A lot of the names of the calendar that we use today are basically Babylonian and a little bit earlier than that. Why am I saying this? In the time of Jesus, around the first century AD, the calendar was the same as we use it today, which is a lunar and a solar calendar. Why a solar? Because every 4 years, we have what we call in Hebrew, Shana Me'uberet, a longer year, we add another month. Same thing with the Gregorian calendar, that they add one more day, because the solar calendar is a little bit more accurate than the lunar calendar. All of this here is just to give us an understanding of what am I trying to show here and how we can try to analyze the birth of Jesus. So what is December? When if you would have gone to someone in Judea around the first century AD and you would tell him, is this was Jesus was born on December 25th, his first question will be not who is Jesus. Jesus was very, very well known in Judea. If his first question will be, what is December? I have no idea what December means. Because again, the months that we are using today are from, and the calendar that we're using today is from the 16th century AD. So it was definitely not December 25th, for sure not. So let's try to understand what exactly is going on and how we can try to find other sources for us to learn what can be the birthday of Jesus. I use this picture right here that you see. This is Herodium for a lot of the tour guides on this presentation. You guys know this place very, very well. This is the tomb place of Herod the Great. We know that Jesus was born in the time of the realm of Herod the Great. We know this from Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. And Herod the Great is the same guy from the Massacre of the Innocents, which is associated, of course, with the story of Pharaoh and the tossing of the innocents into the Nile. There's a lot of prefigurations in the Bible that this is not the presentation for it. But who is this guy? This is the same Herod the Great that was visited by the three Magashes. This is the same Herod the Great that rebuilt the second temple. This is the same Herod the Great that tried to kill Jesus and made the family fleeing to Egypt. We do know that Herod the Great died around the year 4 BCE, which means that Jesus was not born in the year 0. Why? If Jesus would have been born in the year 0, that means that he was born 4 years after Herod died. If this is the case, then the entire understanding of the story of the Magashes and the Massacre of the Innocents is incorrect, because a dead king cannot give such a decree because he's no longer with us, which means that the latest time that we can point for the birth time of Jesus, the year will be at least -4. Anything after that, we're just not going to correlate with historical and archaeological events. So after we understand that, we need to look not at the year 0, we need to look all the way to the year -4. Let's try to understand the timing of the year. We know very well, and especially those today in Israel, you know how cold it can be here around the winter time. If you're up in the mountains, here in the Ela Valley is pretty cold. I mean, today, Ela Valley, we had upper 40s. Now at night, they're talking about upper 30s. I'm talking Fahrenheit here, of course. So it is cold. It is cold. When we, and this is in the valley, not in the mountain. When we read our scriptures, we know about the shepherd's field. Shepherd's field that were with their flock out in the fields where they heard about the birth of Jesus. For anyone that is in Bethlehem around the time of Christmas, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If you would try to camp out now at this time around December in Israel, especially up in the mountains, you will be pretty uncomfortable. It will be freezing. So to think that the shepherds were out there with their flock doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to add another stick to the pile here. The Kislev 25 is the date of Hanukkah, is the date of dedication, the festival of light and temple dedication. We know about this festival quite a lot, actually, all from scriptures. Jesus was in the temple during the Feast of Dedication. But maybe this is one of the reasons why this birth of Jesus was connected, because of the dedication, like the reintroducing of the covenant. This is an assumption that I think doesn't hold a lot of water. I did read about it, but I wouldn't put my bets on that assumption. The next assumption, I would. When we look at the date of December 25th, it is the pagan Roman festival, which is called Saturnalia, okay, which is a week of celebration around the time of December 25th because of the shortest day of the year. In that time, it was one of the largest festivals in ancient Rome, where the poor gave gifts to where the rich gave gifts to the poor. The republic gave alms to the needs. It was a wonderful time of celebration, and probably, and I take us back to what we read in Alexandria, the year 200, when Christmas was first celebrated in Rome in the year 336 AD, which is a little bit after the Nicaea Creed, just a bit after the Nicaea Creed, it makes sense that the fathers of the church back then in Rome associated the birth of Jesus with one of the most important Roman festivals. How can we assume that? Because 150 years before that, the Egyptians did the exact same thing. The Christian community in Alexandria did the exact same thing as we read in the historical accounts. So December 25th is actually an annexation. The birth of Jesus is an annexation to the Roman pagan festival that was celebrated in December 25th. So if this is what I'm going to do, my assumption and my calculation, and bear with me because it's a little bit tricky, but bear with me. So we going to use the conception of John the Baptist, because John the Baptist, he's the time of his birth. This is probably going to be the closest that we're going to have any kind of a specific date. That'll be the closest that we can do. So let's try to calculate together, and maybe we can see a clearer picture. Okay, I'm going to do this scale back by using the priestly watch, in Hebrew called Mishmarot Kehuna, because it has a lot to do with John the Baptist, or actually with his father Zechariah. So I claim that the conception of John the Baptist was made around the time of the month of Sivan, during the feast of Shavuot, later on to become the feast of Pentecost. Why am I claiming this, or how can I claim this say? So when we look at the Bible and Luke 1, verse 5, we know that Zechariah was from the house of Abia, from the priestly divisions, right? The house of Abia held the 8th watch. How do we know that? Very clearly. It's in 1 Chronicle 24, verse 10. So we have the connection of Zechariah, not to be, by the way, not to be mistaken with prophet Zechariah. I'm talking Zechariah, 1st century AD, the father of John the Baptist. So Zechariah was a member of the family of Abia, okay? We know their shift. Their shift was the 8th of, there was the 8th shift, okay? And when we calculate that time, if we're going to use the year -4, as I said, the latest will be -4. And most scholars today believe that Jesus was born around the year -4, because the massacre of the Innocence happened just a little bit before Herod's death. Then we can make a calculation of what was the time of the conception and the time of the birth of Jesus. All right? Let's try to analyze this. Stay with me. It's a little bit tricky. All right? The priestly watches actually were conducted by King David. He took the descendants of the families of Elazar and Itamar, who were the sons of Aaron, and he basically made 24 groups, which is called mishmarot, or courses. And these are families of Kohanim, priests, that will serve in the temple of God. What will happen is that each family, we have 24 families. Each family will serve twice a year in the temple, and all of the families together will go up to the temple during the 3 main pilgrimage, which is Shavuot, Pentecost, Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacle, and Pesach, which will be Easter. Okay, so let's try to analyze this. On a normal year, we have 12 lunar calendars. All right, from 28 to 30, from 29 to 30 days. The total gives us 354 days, which is a little bit shorter than the Gregorian calendar that we have, which will be 365 days. All right. This is on a regular year, not a me'uberet, not a year with an extra month, which we call adar bet. Okay. So this is on a regular year. So if we're going to make the calculation, look at this. We have 24 courses times twice, because each family served twice in the temple, plus 3 weeks of the pilgrimage. Those weeks will be the week of Shavuot, the week of Sukkot, and although Shavuot will be only 3 days, still it is a major pilgrim. So they will stay, it's a major festival. So they will stay in Shavuot as well. So if we're going to do the calculation, we have 48 weeks plus 1 week of Passover, plus 1 week of Shavuot, plus 1 week of Sukkot equals 51 weeks. Okay? Everybody are par with what I just said? Raise your hand so I know that we understand. All right? Perfect. Now, let's do this calculation. We are now today in the year 5781 to the creation of the world. Okay? This is this year, Hatashfa, this year. The year -4 was actually the year 3783. I'm going to show you the calculation in a second. So I want you to bear with me. This is the tricky point. So let's do this. I'm going to read this. In the year 4 BC, okay, time of Herod the Great, Nisan 1, which is the Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the year, would have been equivalent to Thursday, April 17 of the year 3783. By the way, guys, you can do this online. I will show you in a second. It's a lot of fun. You can track basically any year using an online calculator. All right. So the nearest Shabbat, because the priestly watch was from Shabbat to Shabbat, the nearest Shabbat was April 19, making the week of the duty of the first priestly course from Shabbat, noon of April 19, to Shabbat, noon of April 26, which in that year was the Shabbat Gadol, meaning the Saturday before Passover. Okay. Second shift was April 26 to May 3rd. And that shift was interrupted by Passover, because we know that all the shifts, all the courses came up to help in the temple. All right. Then we have this. This, of course, was called the second course and extended. And because of that, the second course was extended until the Shabbat after that. All right. So they have basically like a double shift. So we are now on May 10 in the year 4 BC. Okay. This is the second shift. The period of the service of the 8th course of Abiyah, which Zechariah belongs to, was from June 14 to June 21. All right. Now this is, I think, the biggest thing. Look at this. The month of Sivan, which is the feast of Shavuot, that would be the time where Zechariah from the house of Abiyah was in the temple. This is the time where the archangel Gabriel came to him and told him about the annunciation, not of course of Mary, but of Elizabeth. All right. I will try now to do this together with you, so you will see what I'm talking about. So I have here, this is the online, I'm sorry it's in Hebrew, but I will translate. This is the online calculator. Okay. Today is 26th of December 2020. I put the date of the creation of the year -4 will be 3783. All right. This is Aleph Nisan. Here is the beginning of the year of the counting of -4 in the birth year of Jesus. All right. So this is what we have here. We got the 17, and we said this is the first watch. Okay. First watch to the 26. All right. Next month we have the 26 to the 3rd. This is a mistake. This was supposed to be here. Shabbat is the 3rd. We said it was interrupted because of Shabbat. All right. So they have double shift. They ended on the 10th. 10th to the 17th, 3rd shift. 17 to 24, 4th shift. 24 to 31st, 5th shift. Next month. 7th shift. And look at this. 8th shift. All right. From 14 to 21, it's the 8th shift. From this week over here to this week, from this Shabbat to this Shabbat, was the turn of Zechariah. And look at this. He ended here in Shavuot. All right. So we can track back to see exactly the time that Zechariah was in the temple. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, let's go back again to the presentation. When we understand that, when we understand the calculation, let's try now to scale back. All right. Bear with me. So this is, of course, the visitation of Mary and Elizabeth. Elisheva in Hebrew. Let's calculate together. We know that the archangel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her about the Annunciation, about Jesus, when John was 6 months old in the womb of Elisheva, of Elizabeth. All right? We know that because when we look at Luke 1, verse 26, it says this is the time of the conception. All right? The visitation of Mary to Elizabeth, John was 6 months. I am not sure that when Mary visited Elizabeth was exactly when John was 6 months old in the womb, but we do know that the Annunciation happened when John was 6 months old. All right. So if John was 6 months old and he was conceived in Sivan, so the time when he was 6 months old would have been Kislev, the month of Kislev. Calculate. Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. All right? 6 months. All right? 6 month Kislev is, give or take, the time of the dedication of the temple. So maybe one of the reason, it's an assumption, maybe one of the reason that Mary went to visit Elizabeth, first of all, was to be with her, because we know that Elizabeth was an elderly woman. Kind of reminds us the story of Sarah and Abraham, or Hannah and Samuel. But Mary came to visit her kin, her family member, probably to use also the momentum of the Feast of Dedication. But this is not my anchor. My anchor is this. If we know that John was 6 months in the womb during the time of Kislev, we will know when Jesus will be born, because you add 9 months to Kislev, and you're going to reach the month of the end of Elul, beginning of Tishrei, which will be around September. All right? Let's do this again. We're using John as an anchor. The Annunciation of Jesus was made when John was 6 months in the womb of Elizabeth. He was not born yet. We know that the conception of John was in the month of Sivan. We just made the calculation when Zechariah was in the temple. If we make this calculation, we can understand that Annunciation was around the time of Hanukkah in Kislev, which means 9 months later, it will be Elul or Tishrei, the birth of Jesus. All right. So you can tell me, this is nice, this is fun, but you can't really have a full assumption based on a full theory based on just assumptions. So let's look at a little bit more ex-biblical sources. I went to the Quran. This is for our friends from Abu Dhabi right now. I went to the Quran, to the Surah of Maryam. Maryam, of course, Mary. Okay? Look what it says here. It says over here in Ayah, verse 25. Grave not, for thy Lord had provided a ritual beneath thee, and shake toward thyself the trunk of the palm tree, and it will fall fresh, ripe dead upon thee. We all know as kids, we learned the song, Betishrei Natan Hadekel Pri Shachum Nechmad. In the month of Tishrei, it is the time of the dates that they are ripe. This is the time of the dates. When we take the calculation that we just did using the Old Testament and the New Testament, and we add in a completely out of context source, which will be the Quran, which is not based on the Old and New Testament, and we will see that they still speak about the month of Tishrei. We have a full cross right here, using both, actually 3 sources. Okay, the fruits of the palm tree will be around the Feast of Tabernacle, can be anywhere between the end of Elul till the end of Tishrei. Okay, let's continue on. We know very well that during the time of the birth of Jesus, There was the Great Census. We know this from actually from the Bible and from Josephus about the Great Census that took place in Judea in the order of the emperor. The census would not have been taken during the time of winter. Why is that? Again, we live in Israel. For the tour guides that are here with us tonight, we know that in harsh climate, cold climate, and rainy, the roads are not in good condition until today, actually. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to gather everybody during the wet season, during the winter season. We know this very, very well. Actually, and a completely different occurred that if you remember the story of Sisera, that he drowned in the mud of River Kishon, that's in the wintertime. We know that. Back then, the road condition in Israel was not that good, especially in the wintertime. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to make the census in December because people don't travel in December. When they do travel, they will travel to Jerusalem anyway during one of the three main pilgrimage, either Sukkot, which will be the month of Tishrei, or Shavuot, which will be the month of Sivan, or Passover, which will be the month of Nisan. All right. So it is safe to assume, I'm going to read you this part right over here. It is safe to assume that the Romans designated the census to correlate with the main pilgrimage. We just said that if you use those two sources in Book of Luke and the Quran, we can see that the assumption is that Jesus was born around the feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacle. We need to remember again, back then when people traveled, it's not like today. They didn't travel just to the holiday. It took a while to get from Nazareth to Jerusalem. So it's safe to assume that Mary and Joseph made their way, number one, for the census, and number two, probably to go to the temple. It took them more than an hour and a half as it takes us today. So they arrived to the outskirts of Jerusalem, not exactly during the feast, but about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the gathering. All right. How is this correlates again into scriptures? When we read in the accounts in Luke 2, it says, and look at the end of this here. While they were there, the time came to her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. In December, where there's no travelers and no one is traveling around the land, there'll be a lot of space in the inn. The inns are not going to be packed. We know this when we have peak season in Israel, you cannot find a hotel room. And I'm not talking here about pilgrims, I'm talking about tourists. There's no hotel room to be found. So when you take all of these points and you put them together, it is safe to assume that the journey of Mary was to one of those pilgrimage. Which pilgrimage? Probably, because of the calculation that we did, to the pilgrimage of the Feast of Tabernacle, which is, of course, Sukkot, the month of Tishrei. Okay. Another thing that I want to speak about is the place of the birth of Jesus. There are two main assumptions. One, of course, is Bethlehem itself, although we know from scriptures that Jesus was not born in Bethlehem. He was born in the outskirts of Bethlehem because there was no place in the inn in Bethlehem. We just read that. All right. There's a very interesting place not so far from Bethlehem called Migdal Eder. Migdal Eder correlates very well with the book of Genesis. It is just a tradition of the birthplace of Jesus. But it's not in Bethlehem itself. It's in the outskirts. I do want to address, and this is especially for our friends in the United States, about the theme of the nativity that we see so many times in the West. When you look at all these pictures, these are all Western pictures. You look at the pictures of the birth of Jesus, you see a kind of like a Swiss chalet. Look at this. It has like a wooden roof or usage of timber or pine trees. Not really. This is not how Bethlehem looked like, not 2,000 years ago and not today. Actually, in fact, we see lineups of people coming to the Church of Nativity, mostly Catholic and Greek Orthodox, going to see the true, quote unquote, birthplace of Jesus. And there's a huge lineup of people going to see the Star of Bethlehem, which will be this star right over here. And it always makes me wonder why people are standing in line for so many hours to see a star made in silver embedded to the ground, where the star that we read about in the Bible, of course, is up in the heavens. But again, this is tradition. The Church of Nativity today, it is a tradition. We do not know that this is the birthplace of Jesus. It's a tradition from the time of Helena. All right. Now, if any, this is how the outskirts of Bethlehem look like around the year 1865, when David Roberts, a great painter, was here. I want you to see the outskirts. Look at this. It's barren land. There's nothing here. A lot of place for pastures, by the way, for sheep herds, absolutely, but no forest or no nothing, which means that probably Jesus was born in a cave, not inside this kind of a Swiss chalet that we see all over the place in Western countries. So the outskirts of Bethlehem are going to be semi-desert, a lot of rocks, and the manger was probably made out of stone as well. It was probably used by shepherds in the outskirts of Bethlehem. All right. So if anything, that will be more likely be a cave and not so much of a Swiss chalet. All right, or Swiss Alpine. What's the name of that ski resort? St. Moritz style resort. No, this, if any, it will be something like this. What I want to do again, I want to focus again on the main progress that made me to come to this understanding. The birthplace of Jesus, how it looked like, it's a given. We know it was not this Swiss Alpine ski resort type of a place. It was more of a cave. But the big thing here, this is what this presentation was about, is to try to analyze the date of the birth of Jesus. So just for us to summarize, we used few sources. One of them will be Old Testament, will be about the priesthood divisions that was made by King David. Then we have in the accounts of Luke, we know to connect Zechariah. We know to connect Zechariah to a specific priesthood watch, which is, and by calculating the time of the conception of John, we can correlate using the time of Abia in the temple, which will be the month of Sivan. We can correlate and understand the birth time of Jesus, which will be around the Feast of Tabernacle, and of Elul, beginning of Tishrei, around the month of September. But I wanted to use this slide to make my biggest point. And I want to read it. I usually don't read my presentation, but I want to read it out loud because it's important for all of us to hear. While it is very interesting to know Jesus' birth from a historical perspective, it is theologically completely irrelevant and holds very little importance when we're looking at the bigger picture. It is less important that we will know when it happened, and more important that we will know that it did happen. The Bible is very, very clear about this. So this presentation was just to stimulate our academic mind. We are not looking for the exact date. This is not a pagan way of understanding. The important is the event that happened. And that is why if we're going to go with this assumption, with this understanding, to any place in the world and tell them, let's move Christmas to September, it will never work. But it doesn't need to work. What we need to remember is the actual account of the birth of Jesus. I'm going to open the mic now, folks, for questions. Let me just see how I move this so I can see everybody. And this will be open for discussions.
עומר, אני לא רוצה להגיד את זה באנגלית, כי אני לא יודעת מי המאזינים הנוספים, אבל זה קצת בדיחה, אבל מתאים לו גם מזל בתולה.
For our friends in this is nice, Yaloma, say it. I think it's cute.
לא,
It was not me. It was not me. It was Iris. But I definitely was thinking about the same because I have a son that is virgin too.
Virgo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, Iris and Yaloma, I never ever thought of what is the pagan astrological sign of Jesus. Never crossed my mind, but it's fun. I mean, okay, sure, why not? Folks, if you have any question, please, this is the time.
Omer,
Mm.
hi.
Hi.
I'm not sure I got your point about Elizabeth being pregnant for 6 months with John,
Mhm.
and in the Pentecost, in the pilgrimage of Pentecost.
Mhm.
Then that is proving that John was born 3 months later at around the Feast of Tabernacle. But how does it relate to Jesus?
No. Okay, let's go back again to that slide. This is very important. Thank you for the question. This is very, very important. All right. So we know, we did the calculation that Zechariah was in the temple around the feast of Shavuot, the feast of Pentecost, okay, which will be the month of Sivan. All right. When John was 6 months old, not born, he was not born yet. He was what is the English word for that? He's still in the womb. He was not born yet. When he was 6 months in the womb of Elizabeth, the archangel Gabriel gave the annunciation to Mary. All right, so let's calculate from Sivan. Add 6 months from Sivan. All right, that will be around Kislev. That will be the end of the year, right? You with me?
I'm with you.
All right. So the annunciation, not the birth, the annunciation was given around the month of Kislev or Tevet, right? 6 months after Sivan, right? This is the annunciation. Now,
But how do you relate, Omer, just a minute, please. How do you relate between the pregnancy of Elizabeth to the Feast of Tabernacle? Not Tabernacle, sorry, the Feast of Pentecost.
Let's go back again. When we made the calculation, this is a very, very, very good question. We just made a calculation. When was the turn of the house of Abia or Abijah, okay, that Zechariah was a member of the house of Abia. Okay, so far we're clear.
Yeah, Omer, that was on Sivan, but how does it relate to the pregnancy of Elizabeth?
The angel came to Zechariah when he was in the temple and he told him, your wife is pregnant. And Zechariah couldn't speak. He was in shock. And the angel told
So that's when you start the count of the pregnancy?
Of Elizabeth. Yes. You start to
Okay.
count the pregnancy of Elizabeth from feast of Pentecost,
Okay.
from Shavuot.
Okay, got you. Got the mathematics now.
Yeah. Other question?
Thank you.
Sure, anytime.
You mentioned hi.
Let's say it is very confusing, but it works.
Hi, it's Amit.
Hi, Amit.
You mentioned that not only during Shavuot, Zechariah was in the temple, but it could be also any other feast, unless I didn't understand you well.
Yes, because Zechariah was a member of the Mishmarot, of the priesthood watch, he could have been also during Passover, and it could be also during Shavuot. Yes, absolutely. The turn of the house of Abiyah to be in the temple in that year was in Shavuot. Now, can you come and say it could be the annunciation of the archangel Gabriel about the birth of John could have been also during the feast of Sukkot or during the feast of Easter, of Passover? Yes, you're right. You are correct. But in any of those, I'm not going to make this calculation not to exhaust all of our people here, but make the calculation yourself. Take that assumption and put the annunciation of John in Sukkot or in Pesach, and you will come to the point that Jesus, if that will be the calculation, Jesus should have been born in the winter. But when we are looking again, people did not travel in the winter, and we know that the shepherds were not out in the winter. So it doesn't correlate with the biblical text. But to add to what you just said, can it be that the angel appeared to them in one of those three pilgrimage? Yes, it can. This is just a suggestion that I'm suggesting. I'm not saying that this is what happened. This is a suggestion for us to stimulate our mind.
Thank you.
Omer, Omer, the research is advancing very quickly in the past maybe decade. How does the different churches relate to the possible new information about the birth time of Jesus according to the new research?
You know what? Maybe I can answer this, but I do see Daniel Ketchum, my friend. Would you answer this question for us?
Omer, I'm blessed to be with you. It's always a delight, and to be with friends of yours from around the world. Thank you for the way that you teach. Thank you for your mind. We thank God for you. And you know, one of the issues that you addressed in your final slide, in your conclusion slide, was that it's not so important to know when or how or where, but why. And I'd love to hear you answer that question. But just repeat the question that your friend, and I especially appreciate the fact that you have Jewish people, you have some of your tour guides with you, you have Islamic people from other nations. But what was the question specifically that the lady just raised? Could you repeat it, ma'am?
I will. Yes, I will. I will happily repeat the question. As the research advances very quickly, especially in the past decade, maybe, how do the different churches relate to the new possible ideas and information about the possible birthday of Jesus? Thank you.
I actually taught on this 2 weeks ago in a large congregation in Vancouver. Omer, you were there back in November with us.
Mm-hmm.
The place is called Liberty Bible Church. And so I taught on this there on a Sunday morning. And they actually relate well to this, especially when they realize from John in the Brit Chadashah in Yohanan in John chapter 10 that when Hanukkah came, it was winter in Jerusalem, which is what Omer was teaching, obviously. And Jesus was walking in the temple around Solomon's colonnade. So then in that same passage, by the way, and I share this not at all to be divisive or contentious, but those of you who understand Christian people like myself and ask about churches, it was in that same passage that Yeshua, Jesus, identified himself as the Messiah. You can just look at it for yourself. And obviously that's what I believe, but I certainly honor the fact that most of you on this Zoom would not claim Jesus or Yeshua as the Messiah. But churches relate very well to this because they understand the points that Omer has made. First of all, it was wintertime. You're not going to have sheep and shepherds. It was taxation time, and you're not going to invite people to their home cities when it was very difficult to travel. And then there was no room in the inn. There would be plenty of room in the inn in December because people don't travel that much. And so all of your points were excellent, Omer. And quite honestly, when we describe this to Christian people, to churches, they say, oh, that makes very good sense. So in the same gospel, in the Brit Chadashah, in Yohanan chapter 1, listen to this, another point for the Feast of Tabernacles. In John chapter 1, verse 14, and the word that the Bible refers to Jesus, the word became flesh and tabernacled among us. We looked upon his glory, the glory of the one and only from the Father, full of grace and truth. So he tabernacled among us, birthed during, very likely, during the Feast of Tabernacles. And so we have him celebrating the Festival of Lights in John chapter 10, birthed during Tabernacles. He tabernacled for a while among us in John chapter 1. And quite honestly, when we take time to describe this, because we love Jewish people, thank you so much for giving us the Bible. And thank you for giving us to the one whom we claim to be the Messiah. When we describe this to them, they say, oh my goodness, why haven't we been taught about this? But because of our relationship with Omer and so many other Jewish people we love, when we lived in Israel for more than 4 years in Jerusalem, we love to share these kind of truths that we have learned from people just like you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. Folks,
Thank
any
you very much.
I gotta say, folks, I'm not the only Bible scholar in this Zoom meeting. I'm definitely not. So please use this platform. You're gonna have some of the best minds I know in the world about biblical studies. So please.
Hey, Omer.
Yeah, Marty. Hi.
Marty. Just a point of clarification. The first half of the presentation, you went through the different conversions and translations of the different calendars. The second half was the month of the year that this birth occurred. I understand the conclusion on the second half, but in the first half, am I understanding that your calculations show that it probably occurred before Herod passed away in 4 BC? And so probably it occurred around the year of like 5 or 6 BC, the year.
The assumption is that it could not have taken all these events could not have been after the year -4. It could not have been, because
Right. So before that, would it be around the year 6 BC?
6, 5, even 4 BC, because we don't know when Herod died. He died in the year -4. So anytime around that, if you play with that calculator that I put, it will always reach, by the way, it's going to be the same pattern. If it's not going to be the exact Feast of Tabernacles, it's a Feast of Pentecost, when the angel appeared, the angel still appeared around the month of Sivan. So the calculation will be the exact same.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Other questions, folks?
Yes, I would like to ask, please. Yahaloma. This is a very, very unusual topic. And when you have a group that is coming to Israel, I understand you can definitely do a session in the evening and talk about those things. But do you think that might get into one of the sites in Israel that you can bring it up?
The answer is yes. I can tell you that.
Where?
Well, if the group would like to speak, for example, if you're going to be in Nazareth, you are in Nazareth or in Mount of Precipice, and you speak about the Annunciation, this is a definitely very good place to do this Bible study, especially on Mount of Precipice, because that's the end of the day, and you can give that explanation. I would say that, you know what? I would dare to say that 99% of the churches will not be resentful for this, because you don't disagree with the fact that Jesus was born. Not at all. Not at all. You just showing another understanding, and you can use that in Nazareth. You can use that in Tzipori. You can use that in Mount of Precipice. You can use that if the group is going to Bethlehem a night before. They will really appreciate that. You can use that at Shepherd's Field. And even if your group is going to Herodium Castle, you can do that at Herodium as well. Anything associated with the birth of Jesus, either in Nazareth or in which will be the Annunciation, or in Bethlehem, which will be the actual birth, you can definitely use that this study.
Or in Ein Karim.
Or in Karim, of course, absolutely. Elizabeth, for sure, yeah.
Omer, I have a question.
Please.
Iris. Isn't it, I'm wondering if it's not something that is undermining the one of the most basic things that Christian people have, which is Christmas. You know, they are celebrating it and they are very connected to it. It's a very important festival, holiday, I don't know, and that is connected to the family, which is a very strong source there. And I'm thinking if it's something that is is it okay to have any doubt about the date that they are celebrating for so many years now?
I think that all churches would agree, all of them, they will agree there was no such thing as December 25th. When Jesus was born, there was no Gregorian calendar. It's a calendar that was made in the 16th century AD. We're talking 1600 years after resurrection. So it was not there. So for sure, Jesus was not born on December 25th. That is a given. I think that when we are trying to analyze and to find the Jewish calendar, the Hebrew date of the birth of Jesus, that would have been the date that would have been celebrated by the first disciples because they didn't know any other calendar. They followed the Hebrew calendar. So when you give this understanding to your group, it's not just that it doesn't undermine Christmas. It actually adds a lot of credibility to it because you don't attack Christmas, God forbid. You are everybody agrees that Jesus was born, but you are giving them new vessels to see Christmas in the eyes of the early church, which is something that no one had ever, I think, ever given them.
Thank you.
I see that Daniel is approving.
Omer.
Kelly, yes.
I have two questions. So actually, so you are the third person that I have listened to, and I'd say maybe the last 3 or 4 years that have come to the same conclusion that September is the actual date of when he was born. And I can answer that question for the other lady as an American in our churches. The majority of us know that he was actually born around in this area, and Christmas for us is an avenue of being able to celebrate that time frame. And I think tradition is so you're never going to change that date. So that piece of Christmas for how we celebrate is, I think, it's going to stay forever. I do think it's wrong, but my second thing is on when you said the Massacre of the Innocents for Herod, is there any type of backup besides the Bible that actually happened? So then you could pinpoint when that actually happened?
Well, the Massacre of the Innocents itself, being a very traumatic event in scriptures, actually we didn't find any archaeological evidence of the Massacre of the Innocents. But it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, of course, because the amazing thing about archaeology, one of my professors used to say, archaeology is a science based on nothing, because the fact that you didn't find it, it doesn't mean it didn't exist. You just didn't find it yet. So
right.
I would argue and say that Herod was one of the most resentful kings in history of Judaism. He was. I cannot think of another king that people hate as much as Herod. And when you take a Jewish king, by the way, not Pharaoh, of course, but a king of the Jews, I think Manasseh was even more acceptable on the Jews than Herod. And I think one of the reasons that gave him this sit on the throne of being one of the worst kings in history, or the hated king in history, is that event of Massacre of the Innocents. And one of the things that it's funny that we are still looking for the tomb of Herod, but I knew Professor Netzer, may he rest in peace, when he dug the Herodium. his assumption of the place that he believed that this to be the mausoleum of Herod is because it was smashed into tiny little pieces deliberately, meaning it wasn't destroyed in an earthquake. Someone actually came there with a chisel and a hammer to break and erase any memory of this king. Now, to remind us, King Herod the Great also renovated the temple. So, in a way, you can say he was a good king. He actually gave us back the glory of the temple from the time of Solomon. So, why would the people hate him so much? If you look at acts like this, like Massacre of the Innocents, we'll definitely put him along the same line of other other nice figures in history. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you too, Carrie. I'm a little puzzled and a little. I have some worries about Santa Claus. I mean, Santa Claus is coming on the 25th. I mean, what are we going to do with Santa Claus and the 3 elves?
We need to explain to Santa Claus that he can join forces together with Prophet Elijah and visit us all together at Passover.
Yeah. Let him ride his sleigh directly into the tabernacle.
I tell you what, he can ride the sleigh, and Elijah the chariot of fire. We're gonna have a traffic jam.
That's a good one, Omer.
Folks, is there any other questions regarding this topic?
If you don't mind, I would like to say something about what Kelly was asking. I think it was Kelly about the behavior of Herod's. A few years ago, there was the book that was, it's written in Hebrew. I'm not sure that it was translated to English, that it's about Herod the Great. It was written by an historian and by a psychiatrist, in order to try and figure out what was the personality of Herod the Great. Actually, the aim was to find whether he was paranoid or a schizophrenic. And that was very interesting to see that at the end, they found that he was paranoid, not more than that. I must say that there were other historians of the time of Herod the Great that said that this is a little bit of perspective of 2000 years later, okay? So that the behavior of Herod the Great was very much to his time rather than to how we look at him today. So we never know, but it's an interesting book anyhow.
Mm-hmm. For sure, he was a great megalomaniac person, wasn't he?
And we are happy for that. Otherwise, we wouldn't find anything from that
yes,
time. Who knows?
Of course, we have so many places thanks to Herod.
In the words of the great prophet Mel Brooks, it's good to be the king.
So, Omer, this is Daniel again. Do you have just a half a minute for a very brief answer?
Of course, please do.
So again, in your concluding slide, you said it's not so important to understand when Jesus was born or where he was born or how he was born, but your final sentence was, but why he was born. How do you answer that question?
Well, again, each person here will have a different way of answering. So I will answer from my own point of view. And of course, it doesn't affect on others. This is my understanding. The way I view Jesus as a great teacher that comes to teach us the way and the light. He said, I am the way, I am the light. So the reason for him to be born is to teach us the right way. And that is, I think, the only two other figures in the Bible that had that designated purpose is Moses and Elijah. And I think that's the reason why both of them were in Mount of Transfiguration, but this is a completely different lecture. So the significance of the birth of Jesus was a repent. It was to show us how to repent. and it was a major event. It's a major event ever since the birth of Jesus. We never had anyone that was geared to show us how to repent and how to act in the right way. I'm going to give an example. Mount of Beatitudes, which is a guideline of how to act. But again, this is my own personal take. Some people may agree with me, some people may not.
Thank you so much. I honor this whole lecture today. It was awesome. Just like all of your others.
Thank you. All right, folks, if there's no other questions, I would like to thank all of you, to all our friends from all over the world, for tuning in and for joining us. I hope that this was interesting. As I said, this lecture is recorded and will be distributed both on Facebook, on our website, and on YouTube. Anyone who wants me to send them the link after I will transfer the recording, free, of course. This is what we do. So I would like again to thank you all for joining us and to wish you a post Merry Christmas, even though we know it's not now, it's in September, and a Happy New Year, and welcome 2021. It's about time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to you, Omar.
Thank you. Shalom.
Omar, thank you
Thank you so much.
so much for inviting, and please keep it in mind. We cannot have another holiday. It's in in Tishrei, so let's leave it that way.
You have inflation of holidays.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
תודה רבה, שבוע טוב.
שבוע טוב, ביי.
Bye bye.
Shalom.
64, 64.